Better you
730
should
Commonwealth
smoke
Avenue
pot than
across from
buy all
BU.
those records. And would you please stop playing with matches?
The jazz label Mack Avenue Records, which is the home of Christian McBride and Cecile McLaurin Salvant, and you should know these two records. This one's Kind of Brown, you get it. It was engineered by Joe Furla and at Fantasy Studios, and mixed at Avatar. Good sound. This one, of course, is to me is like Bill Evans at the Village Vanguard sound, even though it's digital. That's because the guy at the label, Al Pryor, is an audiophile. He cares about good sound. So this label has great sound. So if you don't own this record, but you have the entire Lynn Stanley collection, you know, wake up. Okay, so at any rate, the record I'm here to talk about is a box set. Pardon my head. It's this record. It's the Gary Burton Take Another Look Career Retrospective. This is a 4 LP box set that covers all of Gary Burton's labels that he's been on, and it's got hours and hours of music. So we'll talk about that in a written review, because that's not the purpose of this. So Gary Burton is a vibraphonist. So of course the vibraphone is not a xylophone, and it's not a marimba. It's a more it's a metallic instrument. The mallets are hitting pieces of aluminum, and it can do effects. It has a certain particular sound. The vibraphone to me is like when someone pushes your doorbell, and there's this sound that's very pleasant. It's bing, and except when the guy's playing the instrument, he keeps opening your door. It's a sound that's very addictive. So the way I got into the xylophone was from this record. So this is the Terry Gibbs Quartet, that swing thing. So Terry Gibbs is still alive. He's 94 years old. His real name is Julius Gobenko. Julius Gobenko, still alive. I was in a Sam Goody. No, it wasn't even a Sam Goody. It was an EJ Corvette. And somehow the turntable in there was playing this record, Terry Gibbs Quartet, that swing thing. And the sound of it was a pretty good system, although it was EJ Corvette's XAM loudspeakers. The sound of the mallet hitting that piece of aluminum was mesmerizing to me. It just had this beautiful kind of tonality that kind of made it was hypnotic, actually. So I bought the record. I'd never heard of Terry Gibbs. I didn't know anything about this, and I still like listening to this record. Of course, I'd seen someone play the vibraphone on television growing up. This guy, Lionel Hampton, who was on the Ed Sullivan Show, I'm sure, because he was an acceptable black person to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. And but I'd never heard the instrument in high fidelity till I heard it on this record, and that just mesmerized me. So, you know, it wasn't too far from there to the Modern Jazz Quartet. This is a great record. It's an original pressing, and here's an original Japanese pressing. Arigato gozaimasu. So it wasn't too far from there to the Modern Jazz Quartet and to other people who play the vibraphone, one of whom is Gary Burton. So one of the early Gary Burton records I got this is when he was a new vibe man in town. He was just getting started. And this album has Joe Morello on drums. You know who that is. And Gene Chirico on bass. You probably know who that is also. And there's a young Gary Burton. And this is Webster Hall in New York. And that's where it was recorded. Webster Hall in New York. So, at any rate, the sound on this record is insanely spectacular. This is an RCA Living Stereo, and it's amazing. Amazing sounding record. So, the first track on this record, or one track on this record, I forget which one, Sorry, is on this compilation. And it's interesting to hear an all analog version of it versus a digital version, which they had to do. Obviously, to make a compilation, the stupidest thing you could do is keep it all analog when you can take the master and make one off the master digitally, and whatever damage it does, it's not like an extra generation down, okay? As long as we're on the same page. So, this record got me into Gary Burton. Of course, it wasn't the only Gary Burton record, but anyway, it did. So, this box has on it stuff from Gary Burton's RCA Records period, from his Atlantic Records period, from his ECM Records period, from his GRP Records period, and from his Concord and Mack Avenue recordings period. So that tells you something, because those are all labels associated with great sound. RCA Victor, of course, Living Stereo. Atlantic, kind of mixed, but they had George Piros mastering. They had some very good engineers. And ECM, I don't have to say. And the GRP too. I wasn't a big fan of the kind of GRP smooth jazz sound, but they had, and they were, you know, they were one of the first digital labels before digital got even remotely listenable. But they had this, and then Concord and Mack, and those are two other labels that are very sound conscious. So obviously, I suspect Gary Burton is very conscious of the quality of his recordings, because all of his recordings actually do sound very good, and he's only been on labels that care about sound quality. And part of that's also probably nothing would sound worse than a vibraphone poorly recorded. It would probably ring and have horrible overtones and be harsh and not be pleasant at all. So anyway, that's the box. So what else did you know about Gary Burton? So also, after I got into the vibraphone in a big way, here's a record. This is called, this is Red Norvo, another vibraphonist, highly regarded. And this is called The Forward Look. This was a Professor Keith Johnson. It was his first recording from Reference Recordings. This was his first recording. And The Forward Look, that was Chrysler. That was their slogan, The Forward Look. Virgil Exner, a lot of stuff. I don't know where all this stuff is coming from that I'm spewing now, but it's all true. So this is a great vibraphone record. And then, of course, there's Red himself, Red Norvo. There he is, married to Mildred Bailey. This is an early RCA Living Stereo. The sound out of it's insane. Recorded in Hollywood, March 6th and 7th, 1958. So, back to Gary Burton. I just want to show you what I got. Just to show you that I'm not so Gary Burton also ran, okay? This is an interesting record. After the riot at Newport. You know, there was a riot at Newport, and this group, which is kind of a hybrid country and jazz group, was supposed to play. I may have the story wrong, but I'm going to go with it anyway. At Newport, but then there was a riot, so they couldn't play it. And RCA had all of their equipment up there, so they found a mansion or some venue where they could set up the studio, bring some people in, and record this live on a porch of some kind. Like this song's called Nashville to Newport. So it was on here. What was on here is really interesting. It's Boots Randolph, who you probably know. In fact, I think I have a Boots. Do I have it? No, I had a Boots Randolph album, believe it or not. Gary Burton, Hank Garland, great Nashville guitarist who always liked to play jazz also. Bob Moore, bass, you know that. Buddy Harmon on drums. I mean, these are all Nashville studio cats playing with Gary Burton. And Chet Atkins is on here also. And who else is on here? Anyway, it's an interesting record. I wouldn't say it's the best record, but it's a cool record. So I just want to show you that. Now, I'm not as well organized as I should be. So, but I'll show you some other records on here. And there's one record I wanted to show you. Oh, I found another Lionel Hampton record. Good sound, kind of like, with trombone and rhythm, kind of like signing to a major label, Columbia. It's going to be less jazzy than the first one I showed you. So the other record I wanted to show you was, in fact, I may even disappear for a second and get it for you, because you should see this one. I even found it. This is Jazz Winds from a New Direction. I don't know why nothing from this record was on the Gary Burton box. But this is Hank Garland with Joe Morello and Joe Benjamin on bass, playing really brisk tempoed, tuneful jazz, all the things you are. I mean, it's kind of like, almost like a Bill Evans tuneful kind of thing. Hank Garland is sitting there in his MGB. I think it's an MGB. I mean, it could be an MGA. His prize car with his guitars. And shortly after this picture was taken, he was killed in a car crash driving that car. Anyway, it's a demo, 6i. If you ever see a copy of this, I love it. I'm not sure why Gary didn't want to put anything on there, but hey, it's his taste, you know, it's his gig. So this has been put out by Speaker's Corner. It's not as good as the original. And I think Sundays may have done it on CD with extra tracks. But so I brought some other Gary Burton records, many of which are on this compilation. Gary Burton and Stephane Grappelli. There's a cut, at least one, from this. It's a promo copy because I was on the radio at one point and I got it as a promo copy. Here's another one. This is Steve Swallow and Larry Bunker. And this is Ray Hall was the engineer. Ray Hall, great engineer. He also did the Gary Burton New Vibe Man in Town. Recorded at RCA Studio B, no longer in existence. It became an IRS office. So sad to watch that happen. I'm just pulling this out in any order. Here's Crystal Silence, Chick Corea and Gary Burton. This is a classic record, very well known. I have two copies. I have an ECM record. This is ECM German pressing. Yes, German pressing. And this is an American pressing when Warner Brothers was busy releasing ECM. It was a good move on their part because these are great. Do I have to tell you which sounds better? The Warner Brothers is good. Let me see. Did Bob Ludwig master this? Let me see. No. I don't know who mastered it. But anyway, you compare the two, and this is a worthwhile record. This is the interesting record, Throb. This is another one from the Atlantic period. And there's Gary right there. See him? I feel like I've grown up with him. I've grown accustomed to his face. Who else is on it? And there's a stereo system behind him there. So who was involved here? Phil Ealia and William Art. And yeah, I remember this record, produced by Joel Dorn. I especially like this picture, which could be of anything. You know, you look at that picture, it's some sort of cleavage, but it could be any cleavage. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is, this is where your Rorschach test comes in. You look at this picture, and whatever you like, it's going to be there. Isn't that great? It's like a 7-Eleven. Okay, here's another ECM. This is the new Quartet of Gary Burton with Michael Godric, Abraham Laboriel. We've done a lot of rock stuff. And Harry Blazer. I don't know him. Record engineer John Nagy. He will also teach you how to draw. Some of you understand that joke. So you're like, what the hell is he talking about? But anyway, this is also an interesting record. Open Your Eyes, You Can Fly. And then we go back in time to the RCA period. Here you can see Gary's kind of grown his hair long. He's got the sideburns. You have to, got to be hip. And this is with Larry Coryell and Steve Swallow and Bob Moses on drums. This is a great group by any definition. And recorded in California at RCA Victor Studios. Ray Hall and Richie Schmidt, who I assume is Al Schmidt's son. That's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong. And it was mastered by Ray Hall, a famous engineer. This is all good stuff. It's interesting. Again, like I said, if you go through Gary Burton's career, always good sound was important. And maybe he's an audiophile, and maybe he knows if you record a vibraphone poorly, it's just going to sound horrible. Here's the Gary Burton Quartet in concert. This is Gary doing Buffalo Springfield or Crosby, Stills and Nash or something. This is also the same group, recorded live at a Carnegie recital hall in 1968. Again, good people. It's Dyna Groove, and we have to forgive them for that. But this is an interesting record. I like that. Here's another one. Who is Gary Burton? Now, this may have come out before. Let me see the numbers. So this is LSP 2420, and this is 2665. So this came first, and he was called by somebody on the back of this, the freshest, most exciting vibe style in years. Okay, that tells you a lot. This one came out later. This is produced by Marty Gold. You know Marty Gold, Stereo Action, wee, wee, wee. Marty Gold, I think he grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, not too far from where I am. It's a living stereo recorded by another Ray Hall engineer. I think on some level, maybe either RCA decided Ray Hall was a great vibraphonist engineer or Gary Burton did. But anyway, he was 19 years old when this was made, so I think he was like 17 when New Vibe Man in Town was recorded. Here's another one. This is... he plays on this. This is not part of the box. What I'm saying to you is, if you get the box and you enjoy the sound, because it does sound good, then you can go out and try to find these other records, which all sound great, and which are, many of them are very, very good. They stand the test of time. So this is also Webster Hall, and also Studio A in New York, but the recording engineer was Ernie Ulrich. I don't know him. He didn't last long there. So this is Phil Wood's mini album, and Gary Burton, produced by George Avakian. You know, all-star cast of producers, engineers, and even the musical talent. Here's another one. Something's Coming. This is an important phase in a growing career. So he's still a young, nerdy-looking guy. Sorry, Gary, if you're watching this. You know. This is this is Gary Burton, Jim Hall, Chuck Israels, and Larry Bunker. That's a group that you would like, you know. And produced by George Avakian. And this was recorded, does it say where? I don't think it does. How dare they? Anyway, it's a Dyna Groove too, but there's stuff from here on the box. In the box. And here's another record from the ECM period. And this is just 12-string and classical guitars and vibraphone, vibraharp, whatever you want to call it. It's either way works. You know, one of them you can pick up and make a phone call on, the other one you can't. You can put it in your mouth and blow on it. So that's it. And this is, let's see, this is when ECM was being distributed by Polydor in America. At any rate, my point to you is, this is a very well done box set. If you don't know Gary Burton, I think you will enjoy him. And if you're not familiar with vibraphone, it's a very, especially if you're into good sound and you got a good hi-fi. It's just a fact of life. The sound of that vibraphone, of the mallet hitting the aluminum bar, bing! It's just it's mesmerizing, it's intoxicating, it's hypnotic, it's all of those things. And in this book, there's Gary now, still at it. There he was as a little boy, very serious looking. I think he grew up someplace in the Midwest. Where was it? And the notes were by Neil Tesser. Just by coincidence, it happens to be that his father, who was a violinist, had an apartment in Florida where my father and mother had their retirement apartment. It's just one of those. Okay, but whatever. So it covers each period is covered in an interesting way. You see, you get like a picture of the records from that period, and then here's the Atlantic period. It's a very eclectic mix of things, which I'll write about this when I put it in writing. And Gary's played with just some. I call him Gary. I've never met the man. I don't not know the man, but I feel I can call him Gary rather than Mr. Burton, because you might confuse him with Richard Burton. And here's a more recent picture. Anyway, Gary Burton, a career retrospective on Mack Avenue Records. It comes in a nice box, and each of these jackets is nice. Nothing spectacularly unusual, but it's well pressed at RTI and well mastered to vinyl. Who mastered it to vinyl? Let's see if I can see. I don't know. SW. I don't know. It may say on here, and I'm sure if Al Pryor sees this, if he happens to see it, he'll be quick to tell me who it was. But it sounds very good. I will say that the bass is not as good on the cut from New Vibe Band in Town on the reissue as on the original. And maybe when I do the review of the actual box, I will post a quick fair use snippet of both, so you can hear. For some reason, whoever mastered it said, you know what, we'll just roll the bass off because, vinyl can't handle the bass. Yes, it can. The original has all the bass, so why doesn't whatever. It doesn't matter. You can think of this box one of two ways. Either as a great introduction to Gary Burton, from where you will go to buy other of his original records on Discogs or eBay or at your favorite local record store, or you can take this as enough Gary Burton to last the rest of your life and have a great collection that he put together for you on vinyl records, each with a different label starting point. It's a really good compilation. That's it.